Okay, everyone, it's so nice to be here again with Culture Under Fire with Marjorie Waldo. That is me. We are making a case for the arts today, and this episode is called Healing Through Art, the Science Behind Creativity. I want to read you the description. Can art change your brain? The science says yes. This episode dives into how arts engagement impacts mental health, learning, and healing. From the Brain on Art to community therapy programs, I'll explore how creativity is being used as medicine. And I am really fortunate to have two gurus in the field with me today. I have Pamela Goffman, who is a psychotherapist specializing in psychodrama, sociometry.
Geometry,
I
that's
did
it.
it right.
Yes.
And group psychotherapy. And you just told me before we started that you've got a renewed focus on couples therapy.
Yes, correct.
Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you, Marjorie, for doing this.
I also have Miss Allie Lakuta. Did I say it right, Allie?
Yes.
I did. Okay, good. So Allie is the Assistant Vice President of Arts and Wellbeing at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's really cool. That's a pretty important title. So I'm hoping you'll tell us a little more about yourself. I know that you're also an artist. I think you specialize in fiber. Is that correct?
Fiber, drawing, painting, all kinds of visual arts.
How long have you been a visual artist?
Well, I have a BFA in visual arts, and really, I don't remember a time before, I made art. I've been involved in arts and music for my whole life, really.
Okay, that's cool. And Pamela, I want to ask you about the psychodrama piece because I want to focus on the arts angle of
Yeah.
what you do. Were you ever a theater geek?
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theater,
From where?
Ithaca College.
Okay, great. So my bachelor's is in drama also. So I remember now that
Yeah.
Pamela was on my board for many years, and one of the key reasons that Arts Garage became stabilized and successful now. So super grateful. Why theater?
Why theater? For me?
Yeah,
Oh,
from the
that's one of your
early
questions that you're
years.
going to be asking, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm asking now.
Okay.
Why'd you want
Well, I mean,
to
I did
study
theater
it?
as a child, as in high school. Um, I was just drawn to it. Theater was part of my world growing up. My mother was a cabaret singer. I loved the theater, and it was an identity for me. And I didn't realize how therapeutic it was at the time. In retrospect, I realize now, as I augmented my career and went into the healing arts, um, how therapeutic it actually was.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I know for me as a kid, it was like I can remember a time when theater wasn't in my life, just like Allie said she can't
Yeah.
remember when the visual when she didn't have a paintbrush or a pen in her hand drawing or painting. For me, it was a way to connect with a group of people. I found my tribe in theater. I didn't know who I was really in terms of the greater macrocosm of the world, and theater helped me find a place, I felt like, for sure.
I have a great story about how I went from working in the theater to going back to graduate school for psychotherapy.
Tell me.
So I was teaching for my mentor at the Actors Movement Studio in New York City. And movement, we were training the actors to unmask their body, right? How to let go of all the tension that they hold in their body so they could be a blank slate for whatever character they want to create. And that was the first half of the class. They were kind of marathon classes. And we had a live musician, very always super talented jazz musicians who would improvise from the class would improvise. So it was like a conversation between the large classes. There were like 30, 40 people in a class and the musician. And what happened was, after a class, beautiful young woman came up to me, white as a ghost, and said, Pamela, once the studio clears out, can I talk to you? So I said, sure. I was super young, right? I was
Right?
in my 20s. And she said to me, as we were moving, after we did all the technique to let go of the tension and to sort of allow ourselves to be a blank vessel, I had traumatic memories come up. Well, that happened once, twice, 3 times with 3 different people. And that's when I said, this is what's fascinating to me. I intuitively know that the body keeps the score, the body holds the stories. And when we learn how to let go of what we habitually hold, it emerges. And so that's when I decided this is the shift that I wanted to make.
I think it's really cool how we make those connections, because I read a lot about trauma preparing for this, and how when you're feeling the effects of past traumas, it's sometimes really hard to get to allow yourself to get into what caused that trauma. And so the arts help make that a safe space, I think.
Exactly.
You know, Allie, what about you? What made you decide to use the visual arts in your work now? What made you make that connection?
Sure. So, I almost went into therapy also for grad school. So, I had graduated with a BFA in photography and moved to New York to, make my way as an artist, and ended up, working in restaurants to pay the bills, and was managing a restaurant and having kind of a bit of a quarter life crisis.
Yeah, yeah.
My aunt was diagnosed with ALS, and I really watched her cope with a lot of, the complications of her illness through her love of music. And it made me really curious about, what else I could be doing with my life, and the connections between arts and health. And so I considered a number of kind of forks in the road at that point, thinking about continuing education. I looked at schools of art criticism for like an MFA program. I looked at counseling psychology, and then I found the Center for Arts and Medicine at the University of Florida and their Arts and Medicine MA program. And they had a kind of intro course, a kind of online, like 4-hour course to say, like, this is what this is, to make sure like you're in the right place. And I watched the documentary Still Here from Bill T. Jones, and I thought, yeah, this is the place. This is what I want to be doing with my life. And it really, I think, spoke to a lot of the connections that you and Pamela were reflecting on. I was also a theater kid in high school, and engaged in kind of any kind of art and dance that I could get my hands on. And experientially, just kind of going through it, and now can reflect on the value that had on my like internal development, my coping mechanisms, and I'm just really thrilled to be able to further those connections and bring programming to folks now in this career.
I think it's a really cool journey. I'll tell you that the whole purpose of creating this podcast was, well, the current political climate. I don't want to be political in this particular episode, but I do want to say that the risk to arts and culture in Florida particularly, but in the nation, is scary, right? And I think that a lot of people don't understand the value in many ways. Like I had the Stephen Anthony from the city of Miami Beach, who's the economic development director there. And we talk about the economic impact and all of that. But there are so many things related to children, related to people who are trauma, have survived traumatic experiences in their lives. My mother had a series of strokes and pretty severe case of vascular dementia that advanced over a long time, but particularly during the last 3 years of her life. And at the end, she was unable to really talk much and not able to get out of her bed. But if we turned on our Bose speaker and played music from her life, a lot of gospel tunes for my mom were super important. We'd play a list we'd created. My mother was able to sing along, not super clearly, but you could see that she not only could express the tunes, but also remembered she was able to capture the melodies and remember the words and get those out in some form verbally. And that probably, like, it makes my eyes fill up, the whole we are still here, I'm still here idea that the arts allow people to express themselves, to find joy in the most complicated medical situations, whether it's physical or mental or psychological, it doesn't really matter. Just blew my mind and meant the world to me. And I think it's because I knew she found some joy at the end when the rest of her life was not at all joyous. And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to the two of you, because I believe there's magical healing in the arts. Whether it heals you so that you can recover, it did not help my mom recover. It was just allowing her to, the last days of her life, to be a little better. It's a magical thing. So talk to me about, maybe give me a story of where you've seen it in practice, Pamela, with one of your clients, if you can, without naming names or specifics that would identify the person. Can you tell me anything about where you've seen someone who is really struggling to overcome something in therapy, that they were in traditional therapy, but once you engage them in psychodrama, you saw it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to use the most recent. I can pretty much every case I can tell you about would speak to this because I work experientially a lot.
Okay.
So I have a client who I've been working with for a while. She has a sibling who she's not sure what the diagnosis is, but it's a very, very fraught relationship that they have. And she's been understanding through our individual work that her job is to really accept who this sibling is for who they are and let go of her expectations of who she's always wanted this sibling to be.
Right.
She's a very smart woman, my client. She got it. She understood it. And this is the difference between talk therapy and experiential therapy. She came to my group and she did a psychodrama where I had her enroll her sibling. And in psychodrama, we often use scarves to represent qualities. And she used every single scarf I owned to heap on her auxiliary, playing her sibling, saying, this is the quality I always hoped you would have. And she named all of them. The sibling who would be my protector, who would laugh with me, who would help me with mom and dad, who had all the things, who would be responsible to return a call, all those things. And then we did kind of a burial, a grieving process where she said she didn't want to actually bury this sibling, but it was the part of the sibling that she just couldn't let go of. And we covered the auxiliary, we moved it out of the room, and she was able to really have her catharsis. She cried a lot. And then I stood with her, and this is part of the experiential piece, is the grounding. So in her catharsis, it's guided. She's not just in her room crying alone, wondering when she's going to stop crying. I'm there breathing with her. If the client allows, and she did, I can touch the client in certain somatic spots, lower back, upper back, hold a hand, breathe together, and then gently interject what's going on for you. Are you able to let this go? And then we get to the next scene in the drama where, now that this is cleared out, can you bring in the sibling as they are? and see them for who they are with their limitations and accept this person. We had done this in talk therapy for over a year, you know, and again, she understood it. But it's what we work for in psychodrama is we call it the catharsis of integration. The catharsis of integration is affect, that's the tears. In this case, it was tears, it's often tears. Cognition, the understanding, and that comes when
Right.
the client is ready. And then behavior, how it's going to change. We actually have the current and future projected scene. So what is it feeling like in my body in the future when I encounter this sibling? And we can actually do a future projection of what the behavior will be like for her and what is it going to be like. So we don't just send the client out saying like, okay, I let go of it. Now that you've let go of it, let's enact what it's going to be like, so that it's in the body. It's not just in her mind, it's in her body. I have had a role rehearsal spiritually, affectively, behaviorally, and cognitively. And when we have that catharsis of integration, the research shows that that is what sticks. And
Well,
that's when things really change.
it's really transformative, because I think that it's easy as a thinking person who's aware of your world and yourself and your role in the world to understand what you should do, but without the arts-based practice of using your psychodrama, then it's difficult to imagine yourself like you can I identify with this because I could see how you can understand why things are the way they are, understand maybe that it's not your fault and that it's your job to meet them where they are, right? You gotta accept the people in your life where they are in their lives, and hope that they do the same for you. But that doesn't mean the next time you're in that situation that it's a comfortable thing to say, okay, I remember this now. I remember. So you're giving somebody a physiological experience
An
that they
embodied
can
experience,
bring
yes.
into the next interaction that maybe gives a better outcome.
Yeah, exactly. I call it the post test. I say, okay, now we've done this work. Let's go to the post test. Let's go to the future, and we will. Have the group, or if it's just me, we present challenges, all the possible challenges that might come up that could trigger them, and they can then have different ways that they role rehearse how they'd like to interact, and through role reversal, then they can see which one is most effective
Well, you're
from the role
building
reverse position.
building a toolbox, right? And it's one that you've practiced a little through the art informed experience that you're giving them. So,
Yeah.
Allie, does any of this connect for you in the work that you do?
Sure, I'd love to pick up that toolbox metaphor, because I think what we're seeing now is something that we've kind of, as humans, always maybe intrinsically known, and we've had a little bit of forgetting that arts are actually integral to our health and well-being. We've never had a human society or culture that doesn't have arts, right? It is part of who we are. It's part of how we connect with one another, how we communicate, how we make meaning. And I think about um, how we integrate the arts, or how we come to re-understand the arts as a part of our toolkit for holistic health and well-being. Where Pamela's working in therapeutic and clinical spaces, we're working really in the continuum before a clinical experience. So for holistic health and well-being, connection, joy, meaning making, etc. And through some of our programs, and in particular our arts prescribing program, we're trying to resource health and social care professionals so that they can refer folks to arts resources in the community in the same way that they would refer them to other social determinant of health needs like housing or food or educational supports. That actually arts and culture are a social driver of health. And the more that we can encourage folks to participate in the arts, express themselves creatively, the better their holistic health will be. And we see that across the lifespan and regardless of, personal abilities or talent, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have. So the clearest example for me in the work that I do at Arts Garage is that we have a volunteer force. It's about 100 active volunteers who probably serve over 10,000 volunteer hours each year. It's amazing. They allow us to elevate our customer service and grow our reach into the community because many of the volunteers are retirees who are on fixed, if not limited incomes. And this is an opportunity for them. When you volunteer, you get to see, I don't know, Tito Puente Jr. or Nicole Henry or Selwyn Birchwood perform this amazing, and I know neither of you really focused on music, but it's the most literal example I can find is that if you put the 10 or 12 volunteers in the room, you're providing them the experience for free. In fact, they're paying for it with their volunteer hours, honestly. They are able to do the seating and the ushering and the setup, and then they watch the show as guests on alert for any issues they might have to help us deal with, but then they help us clean up after. They earn currency for their hours of volunteering that allows them to purchase tickets with those credits or currency, Arts Garage currency that they've earned through volunteering, and invite friends or family or whomever to come as actual patrons where they don't have to clean up my recycling bottles, right? And if you hear our volunteers talk about the impact being part of this experience has on their lives, it's unbelievable. I mean, we've had love stories and divorce stories. We've had lifelong friendships develop where people do things outside of Arts Garage together often, or go to dinner before volunteering together. We had one volunteer who now is in assisted living and is unable to volunteer any longer. But before the pandemic, which is when his circumstances changed, he witnessed for us on a video we were doing about the impact of the arts, about how he truly felt that volunteering, where he was dancing in the corner during the show or engaging with other volunteers or patrons or staff, that this experience was one of several that was keeping him living independently. So I think that it is pretty easy to see when you watch whether they're participating, they don't have to be on the stage, or whether they're sharing this common experience, this universal experience with other people. I think it's easy to see the immediate benefit of what the arts do for people. Pamela, what do you think?
Yeah, actually, what's coming up for me, Marjorie, listening to you is the act of bearing witness. Is so healing. So when we share an experience together, we bear witness to something that takes us from one place to another. I might come in. I've been so fortunate to be at many Arts Garage performances, amazing. And you could come in tired or depressed or sad or something like that, but the energy in the room shifts, and it shifts for everyone collectively, and that's so healing. It's like looking at visual art. I'm sure for you, Allie, when you have people come in and look at visual art or experience a show together, that in itself, especially now when we're feeling so divided and splintered, we can all agree that we're breathing differently, we're moving differently, we're smiling, we're listening to rhythms, or we're crying together. And that's so healing.
Well,
Just like why we make art is to bear witness. We get our expression out, and we don't need to make sense of it. It can just come out as we feel it.
and nobody else even has to witness it necessarily.
We witness it.
We
I
do.
witness
Yes.
my art, and if I'm with a therapist, the therapist bears witness, or the group bears witness.
Right.
It doesn't have to be anyone but you.
Right.
And that's what's so powerful.
There's something really important about looking at I think, about looking at the arts as the great unifier, right? It's so universal that it doesn't matter if you're socioeconomically, culturally, politically, racially, or any other of the things that makes each of us different from the other. It doesn't matter where you come from. If you're sitting at one of our tables watching a show, you're sitting with potentially 4 or 6 strangers sharing pretzels and conversation and witnessing and engaging with the performer on the stage who is sharing their art, this cathartic experience from the stage, and connecting with the audience. It is an amazing experience, whether it's a singer, whether it's actors or the playwright watching what they've created on the stage with you, or whether it's the art in one of our galleries. It's a really, truly cathartic is a great way to say it.
Well, to pick up what Ali was saying about from the beginning of time, the Greeks and the Romans used drama as therapy. So on Sunday, everyone would go to the amphitheater and they would do a drama or a comedy, and you would have your catharsis together. It was for psychological and physical healing.
Absolutely. And taught us about things socially and culturally, forever. It has been. Same with visual arts, Allie.
Yeah, and I think, allowing folks to have that sense of social connection and shared experience, I think speaks to exactly what you were pointing out. Across difference, we can come together and have a shared experience. And that's something that I think is, maybe lacking, in our current climate, like the opportunities to come together across difference and look at where our shared values lie. And I think the volunteering component is actually like a perfect, mix, because we see actually, social prescribing as a broader term within that arts prescribing sits, but social prescribing is about connecting people with opportunities to volunteer time in nature and arts and cultural experiences. And that volunteering component really emphasizes kind of eudaimonic well-being, right? As opposed to hedonic well-being, this act of like being well through our care for others and our collective care for one another, which is a much more sustainable source of well-being, and gives folks a sense of meaning and purpose. And across all of these, arts experiences, whether it's theater or visual art, looking at art in a museum, there's all kinds of really neat research starting now around like what is happening in our brains, right? You spoke about, someone saying, I think this is part of the reason I'm still able to live independently, right? Or your mother's sense of recall when it comes to music, right? It's because like the arts activate these different parts of our brain and help us, build these healthy brain connections and new brain connections too.
Yeah, it can. Your brain is incredibly powerful and can rewire itself. I saw it after physical therapy after each of my mother's strokes. And she could regain portions of the areas that were impacted by the most recent stroke. And that's from the brain being able to reroute the impulses that is telling the body, the mind, the heart. I don't know what that looks like exactly for me, but it rewires all of that and allows you to recapture some of what you're losing. It's a really powerful piece. I read about how important. I'm going to read to you because I can't capture this just from memory. I'm not a science person. I'm a fiction and history lover, but science makes me uncomfortable because I don't feel very strong in that area. And I spent some time looking at this because I think we can't avoid talking about it anymore if we want people to understand how important arts and culture are scientifically, not just economically. It's not just a fun Friday night where you get to hang out with your friends. It's much greater than that. And it's not even about doing the acting, doing the singing, doing the visual artwork yourself. It's way bigger. This is not a quote, but a rephrasing of something I read preparing for this podcast episode. We know from research and practice that expressive arts theory reconceptualized therapeutic action to include arts-based processes as a primary means of inquiry, engagement, liberation, expression, and change. And I think we'd be foolish not to place a value on that out loud and make sure that people understand how powerful the arts are in healing us as a culture, as individuals, in relationships, all kinds of ways. Either of you want to add or change or correct my poor science skills?
I would just say amen.
Right?
Yes to all of that.
Right? I think so.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I would just say yes. And I think our work right now we've done a lot of work to understand how the arts impact us and their value to our health. And now we have understandings like arts participation is a health behavior in the same way that brushing your teeth or exercise or eating well or wearing your seatbelt is a health behavior. Now we understand that. Access to arts and culture is a social driver of health. Like I mentioned before, in the same sphere as, your access to healthy food and housing and education, et cetera. So I think our opportunity now is to also use the arts in getting the word out, right? Like, how do we share this good news that the arts are so good for our health so that folks with resources can choose to spend their time and money engaging in the arts more often, right? Attending our local arts organizations or picking up guitar lessons, which I did this past summer.
Did you? Are you any good?
And then how do we create programs for those who may not be able to access those due to limited resources?
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point. I'm excited about a new thing we're doing. It's not funded yet, but I have a few tickles of potential funders. We're going to do it regardless. We're going to find a way to do it regardless. We're going to push, and we tested the waters last fiscal year. We're going to push both improv and movement classes into senior centers dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's going to be for free to the organizations that are booking my talent to come in and work with very small groups of individuals, because it's a tricky population. So there are some limitations with, it's not like you can do a show for 100 people. You're trying to engage these people in the movement or in the acting that's happening in the improv. And I think things like that may be able to tell that story in a very real way, because it's not only impacting the people who receive the workshop, right, who are part of these organizations serving patients from this demographic, but it also is going to be evident for the children or family members or staff working with these patients, and they can take that message out. I really think that's what the power, the potential, or the opportunity of something like this podcast is. And I encourage anyone, it doesn't have to be a podcast, but to talk about the value of art at a deeper level than just, oh, did you hear this great band? Or, oh, I saw a great play. Or, oh my gosh, the exhibit at this museum was amazing. But to talk about it in a deeper way. And we need to give people those words. We need to give them the language to express that so that people learn to value it. And we need to get it to our politicians and stakeholders who are making decisions about how important funding or policy is related to arts and culture. I just think we need to we have a great opportunity. A lot is at risk for a lot of people if we don't find ways to serve our community and continue serving our community. I hope that makes sense.
100%. I think like the arts and arts organizations are available and affordable and underutilized health resources in our communities. And I think we can really drive a kind of societal shift in our understanding and our valuation of arts and artists. I went into my undergraduate studies as a pre-med major, and my parents were not thrilled when
Do
I,
you have a
switched
plan
over
B?
to my
What's your
BFA
plan B?
studies. And it wasn't because, they didn't think I, had talent or skills or whatnot in the arts, or they didn't believe I was passionate about that. But it was because they feared for my ability to, have a livelihood and take care of myself. And so I think about a future too when someone says to their parents, "Hey, I want to be an artist when I grow up." For that to be met with enthusiasm and welcome and a sense that you will be doing a societal service, right? You are driving health and connection in your communities through your making art and facilitating art with others.
And hopefully that it would be valued enough that your parents wouldn't have to worry about your livelihood.
Exactly, exactly.
That we
It's
could
the
all earn a living
it's
doing
the
that.
truth. It's the truth because artists are the first episode I did was with 3 staff members, each of whom thought they were going to make their living in the arts. One in theater, one in the visual arts, and one in music. And they each have found beautiful careers in helping other people do their thing, but they didn't stay with it. And I think part of it is the intense struggle that artists go through to try to make that happen. That it is. I did not try to become an actor, not because I didn't think I had some talent, because I thought I did. Whether that was accurate or not, it didn't matter. I thought I did. And I didn't do it because I had waited tables already and pictured myself waiting tables for another 20 years at least to even try it. And it's a lot of the people in our galleries, the visual artists, they don't even call themselves artists. They say, I paint or I whatever, but they don't even know what to do at a First Friday Art Walk when somebody says, what made you decide to be an artist? And they're stunned by that question because they don't visualize themselves that way. And it would be nice if we could get to the point where we compensated people for their talent fairly in a livable wage sort of way and valued it at a much deeper level.
Hmm.
One of the things I love about what you do at the Arts Garage, Marjorie, that you've really developed since you've been there leading the way, is the work you do with the youth, because we are all born artists. And that's what's forgotten. And that's the real crime. In my philosophy of the way I work is that, we become more anxious when we lose connection with our inner artist. And that's a very problematic for all of us. We're seeing it societally. We're also anxious. And that creates a lot of problems,
It's
even in
e-
groups.
it's even deeper than that, I think. My career before Arts Garage was in education. And
Right.
my passionate population of students to serve, or the population of students that I served that I was most passionate about, were dropouts. So the length of my career was spent working with juvenile offenders and a dropout recovery program. And what I saw very quickly was that the students who were teen parents, had drug and alcohol addiction issues, came from massive amounts of trauma, high poverty families where they struggled to pay the electric bill or buy food. All of these students, 16 to 21 was the population that I focused on the most. They were painters, even if prior to having the mural opportunity in our cafeteria, they were hanging off of an overpass, right? Or they were singers, or they were writers, even if they couldn't read well enough or write well enough to document it. They were composing lyrics to songs, which are nothing more than poetry, they were musicians, they were all these things. And if one teacher had seen that when they were in elementary school, the difference that the research says that makes in a kid's life, they likely would have been closer. At least they'd had a lot of other challenges, but if somebody saw that joy that they got from the practicing those arts, maybe they could have kept them in school. Maybe they wouldn't have been so far behind. Maybe they would have stayed home singing or formed a band, or instead of going out and finding other ways to spend their time that got them in trouble. I brought that. You were on the board that hired me, Pamela, and I brought that passion to Arts Garage. And one of the determining factors for me in accepting the position was whether the board would allow me to bring that into the organization, and you did. And I put on the list, I think we've talked about it a lot already, but the topic list that I sent you in advance, I believe it makes a huge difference in our community. And if we are not using our platforms to serve the community and provide them things they've missed, then we're making a big mistake.
Yes.
And I think both of you, over the course of your careers, and Allie, I think when you work with an organization, Pamela has private practice. I think you're working with an organization, Arts and Wellbeing, at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. So you're doing a lot of outreach and creating programs for your community, I would assume.
Yes, we have a really robust portfolio of kind of arts and health programs, including, community-based programs, hospital-based programs, this Arts on Prescription initiative that I was talking about earlier. We're doing research and evaluation and training and education, capacity building for artists and arts organizations to do more of this work. And just as you were saying before, Marjorie, kind of understand the language through which to talk about the work. So I think, especially for smaller arts organizations who maybe, year-to-year budgets aren't quite flexible, I think a key thing to understand is actually you don't have to do anything new to be impacting the health and well-being of the people you serve and the community that you sit in. That the programs that you're already providing drive health and well-being. There's opportunity to do more and do more with intention at specific intersections with specific populations and, specific art forms, right? But the very nature of the work that artists and arts organizations already are doing are promoting health.
And they're doing it for individuals and for communities. And I am convinced that a big part of what we need to do is learn how to talk about it better. Because I think if we could make the light bulb go off for many people about the fact that it's not just my weekend plans, that it's way bigger than that I'm actually healing myself a little bit through the that's what is worth the money to pay for if I'm able to spend it, right?
Right. There was a McKinsey report that was going around about like the wellness market for millennials and Gen Z, right? It's like $1 trillion market that folks are investing in their own well-being. So if folks understood that engaging in the arts impacted their well-being in addition to their, green juices and,
That's right.
Collagen masks
That's right. That's
and
right.
whatever else. Yes, if you have the resources you can spend to, engage in that way. And then, arts organizations can do our best to provide pathways for those who may have fewer resources.
Very cool. Well, ladies, are there any final points? We could talk for a couple more hours, I think, but are there any final points or bragging about the work that you do that you'd like to add that you haven't had a chance to cover?
This keeps going through my mind, Allie, you're bringing it up a lot about wellness. And I think we had the pandemic, which was a great example of how we started focusing on creativity and doing art at home, whatever it was. A lot of creativity happened during that time. We have Zoom. We had got really creative on Zoom. People started painting or drawing or making songs or playing games, which is also healing because it's creative, it's artistic. And the two things that I think really, two things that are going through my mind about what came out of the pandemic is we got back to nature. And that was also tagged by the talking heads who were telling us how to survive the pandemic as wellness.
Yep.
That you have to get outside and you have to do something creative and fun and you have to laugh every day. We were already crying.
Right.
We were having a catharsis. We could also have a happy, joyful catharsis, you
That's
know?
right.
And so I think that's a very good recent example of how we sort of were forced to look at art as wellness.
I agree.
Yeah.
Allie?
It's a good question, of final thoughts. But I think in terms of maybe talking a little bit more about getting the word out and kind of sharing the good news for artists and arts organizations. Um, my colleagues and I have been talking about kind of throwing the party, right? Not waiting for an invitation to the party, but throw the party, invite folks, feed them, but across sectors, right? Policymakers, government, economics, academia, you know, learn more a little bit about how the arts impact health and well-being, and then share the good news. Think about how you can share about how your programs may impact health and well-being, and make those kind of cross-sector connections in your local communities. And sometimes when things feel at an impasse on larger scales, I think the antidote to despair is action, right? And what we can do in our local communities and with our partnerships there can have real impacts on ourselves, our own health, that eudaimonic well-being. We're in service of the arts here and everyone's well-being, and the organizations that we're a part of.
I don't think there is any way I could finish the episode more strongly. I think we should do another one and dig a little deeper, but I really enjoyed talking to both of you so much, and I can't thank you enough, both of you, Allie and Pamela.
Thank you, Marjorie.
Thank you so much.
We'll get the links to everything to you. And for the listeners, I hope that you will listen and share, review, and like the podcast, the series, and the episodes, because I think we need to, one of our efforts is to beat the algorithm and get the word out. And each episode is talking about a different reason for supporting the arts and culture in general. So I hope you'll share. And if you have any suggestions for guests or topics, we'd love to hear them. You can email us at info@artsgarage.org, or you can call our box office, and I never get the number right, so I'm just going to tell you to go to artsgarage.org to find the phone number to the box office. So reach out, and thank you so much for listening.